Hi, welcome to Man on the Street, where we find solutions to your transport problems. Brought to you by 3M Auto. I'm James Deakin, and on this week's show, we got something pretty controversial lined up for you. I say controversial because while we're taking on a very popular topic that everybody's looking for, the subway, the railway, etc., our next guest, he feels, well, it's not only the best way forward, he thinks it's going to take us back a couple of hundred years. His idea? Well, let's still use the railways, just without the rail, if that makes any sense at all. Francis Yuseco is a traffic and transport analyst turned investment banker who has experienced firsthand the debt trap that is involved with developing countries taking out loans from foreign governments. He knows because he used to be the one lending us money. And with his background as a transport and traffic analyst, he saw that the real value to the railways was not the rail. It was actually the one that was holding you back. It's the right of way that interests him. That's where all the value is. And the PNR has a 30-meter wide right-of-way for over 1,000 kilometers stretching from north to south. That's what he plans to take over with something he calls a trackway. Now, a trackway is simply a segregated piece of road using that same corridor or right-of-way of the PNR and dedicating articulated trucks and buses to transport people and cargo, fisheries, agriculture, etc. Now, because it's a completely segregated, enclosed corridor, so to speak, it's 100% programmable. Everything that enters and exits can be monitored, therefore it has the same efficiency and predictability as a railway, with less moving parts. And all those parts can be sourced here in the Philippines. No need for loans, no need for expensive, antiquated technology. At least that's in his opinion. And just a little disclaimer, nobody's hating here. We just want to listen. The railways are a good idea, but are they the best idea? That's what we're here to find out. So, I was able to sit down with Francis for a couple of hours and just to see if we can get this thing on track, or in this case, off track. Hi Francis, welcome to the show. I'm just going to get straight into it because everyone else seems to be excited about the railway system except you. What is it about railways that you don't like? Why aren't you convinced?
There are no railroad companies in the world making money. All of them are either decommissioned, abandoned, or most of them are bankrupt. Today, there are 1,342 abandoned railroads and subways in the United States alone. All over the world, there are thousands and thousands of abandoned railroads. The only railroad company that's making money is the MTR of Hong Kong. Why? Because they already knew that they were going to lose money. So they started buying the properties the MTR would navigate, would run. The railroad operations is itself a losing proposition. They are able to offset this from the real estate and from the advertising revenues.
Do governments, can they write that off as another expense?
Well, the railroad industry tries to justify this by calling this, they like to use this tool, economic rate of return. But it's being offsetted by the foreign exchange risk. They're building these, I call it Imperial Metro Manila Subway. It's going to cost the government $269 million per kilometer. That's only 36 kilometers from one Ayala Mall, Trinoma, to end in another Ayala Mall, Arca.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The one who recommended that was a former Ayala officer who's now back in Ayala. Okay, Noel Quintanar. Okay. We computed the one-way ticket. The one-way ticket, if not subsidized, would cost 13,000 pesos one way. Who can afford 13,000 pesos one way? Even if they pay the ticket at 200 pesos, correct? One way. Where are they going to get the 12,800? They're going to get it from the poor, clueless taxpayers from Mindanao, Visayas, other parts of Luzon. Is that fair?
How do you come up with 13,000? What you're basing that on the loans over?
On a per kilometer basis, and compared to the ridership they're projecting,
Mm-hmm.
projecting a ridership of tops of 700,000. You can come up with that figure.
Mm-hmm.
Prime Minister Mahathir, tried to abort the high-speed rail of from Singapore to Malaysia because it's too expensive. They computed it. It would cost 48 Singaporean dollars one way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? He tried to abort it. But when he found out, naglagay ng very high penalty clause yung China. It's a China loan. He had no choice, but I think to continue with it. But Trump stopped the California, Los Angeles to San Francisco high-speed rail. You know, $125 million per kilometer. So when I first thought about this, okay, let's make an assumption. We need a mass transit system. Okay, we need the logistical backbone, but I don't want to import because I know if I import, kawawa Pilipino. Because if you're earning in pesos but you have to pay in dollars, you're already under the gun. Okay, that's number one. Okay, number two, we started to realize that these export credit facilities, overseas development assistance, were really designed not to assist the borrowing country, but the lending country. Okay, why? Because the philosophy then and the philosophy even up to now, you want to borrow from us, you get everything from us. Raw materials, finished products, spare parts, maintenance. At that time, just consultants. Okay, the money that we borrow or developing countries borrow do not even enter the money supply of the borrowing country, because when you borrow, all they do, okay, you borrow from us, they will just credit. They will credit the foreign account of supplier A, supplier B, supplier C, supplier D, supplier F, whatever. Even their consultants are paid abroad in dollars. But the loan is pegged at the right side of our balance sheet. It's a 40 years loan. So when the first LRT was financially closed in Brussels, in Belgium, the exchange rate was 780 to 1. That was in 72 something. Okay. Because we're an import-dependent country. After 5 years, the exchange rate became 16 to 1. Okay? So, whereas when it was financially closed, you need only to generate 1560 in the earnings of LRT, 780 to pay for debt servicing, and 780 for your operating and administrative costs. You need only to earn 1560 to pay each dollar of loan. Okay? Now the exchange rate is 51 to 1. So how much do you need to generate to pay the same dollar of loan, that you borrowed in the early 70s? You need to generate 102 pesos. Okay? But it's the same dollar of loan. So the effective interest rate, James, is really not what they tell you on paper. The effective interest rate is, the foreign exchange risk that you have to pay. The game hasn't changed. They say that the loan of China is toxic. The loan of all foreign loans are toxic. It's only because China is new in the game. What makes China perhaps a little bit more toxic is that, besides consultants, they're even including their laborers, unemployed. The unemployed Chinese in China are coming to the Philippines to find jobs. There's so many unemployed people in China. In the Philippines, 27% consider themselves below the poverty line. 22.2% are unemployed. It's a combination of unemployed and underemployed.
Okay.
So,
and we're giving jobs to
China because we insist on borrowing money which we don't need to borrow, because right now the domestic financial markets is robust and liquid. We have about 17.3 trillion pesos swimming in the domestic financial markets. Let's say the Kaliwa or the Chico Dam. The Kaliwa Dam only costs 211 million US dollar, no? Or 7.6 something billion pesos. That can easily be financed by, Philippine pesos in using Filipino engineers. Why do you have to borrow, in dollars? We don't have to.
So far, to recap, because there's so much information to digest and so much to unpack, that I want people to get a sense and not lose what we're talking about. It's using the current right-of-way that is already ours. It's already there. It's 30 meters wide by default. Now, the proposal here is basically to take over that space, and instead of rehabilitate it and add rails, which brings us back to the 18th century, we're just saying, no, what's actually of value here is the space, the right-of-way, the corridor. So we can do this by cementing it, asphalting it, rather than using rail, which is cheaper by 87% combined.
By rolling stock stations.
But we're talking plug and play.
Yeah.
So the 87% cheaper than putting a running train station with a running train.
Right.
You're just replacing it with moving buses, articulated buses, running on pneumatic tires, stations. But now you don't need as much space. So now you have an excess space that you can use
for real estate development.
Now, part of the extra added value here is now being a controlled corridor,
Right.
you're able to, as you say, program it.
Right.
So you will only have access into that corridor through some kind of a dispatch service.
Right.
So
Now,
walk us through that.
We call this a gated community, if you will, James, because both sides will now be gated, walled in, you know, and there will be no other transport except the road train, but there will be shuttle services between each station because the road train stops. It stops only and picks up and drops off passengers only on the stations. But there will be shuttle services.
So pound for pound, I mean, it's exactly the same. It's one solution versus the other one is 87% cheaper with far less moving parts.
Right.
Now you're going to use the dispatch service to be able to monitor the volume that's going through there, and then walk us through that.
Yeah.
How does that work, and how does that make it more efficient?
In the airplane industry, you have what you call the
Air
air
traffic.
traffic controller.
Yeah.
Here we have earth traffic controller. Everything can be monitored double time. Because traffic is nothing more than the anticipation and management of variables. What are variables? Other cars, other buses, other jeeps, pedestrians, mga ganon. You don't have that. It's what you call a completely controlled, therefore completely programmable environment. You know, incidentally, the PNR has a right of way of 1,100 kilometers from La Union all the way to Sorsogon. So we have sleeper also, double deck. Yung sa taas, double deck to.
Okay.
No? Electric. Sa taas, sleeper coaches. No? Sa baba, you have dining, bar, and comfort room. You know?
But these are coaches on rubber tires, on asphalt roads.
Okay. Sa gulong na bakal, sa gulong na gama.
Okay.
Parang umikot yan eh. Both of them rotate 360 degrees.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So long as you can bring passengers or cargo from point A to point B.
Another huge advantage of having this system in theory is that you can also control customs and illegal
everything,
trucking and illegal hijacking, and this is a huge problem, right?
Our road train for cargos can actually be online with the BIR and the customs, because when they load unload cargos, we have a bar chart. You know, the BIR would know how much taxes should be paid for this particular cargo, and we drop them off in a certain warehouse. Kasi may mga warehouses katabi yan no? The BIR would know, this cargo went to this warehouse. They're easier to track, even the customs duties, the taxes that have to be paid.
Now, you first pitched this whole idea, in the late 80s, you were actually trying to take over the corridor where the MRT is now. What happened there? You got pretty close, right?
The thing is, after we submitted our study, unfortunately, Secretary Reyes was replaced by Secretary Orbos. Okay. And then Secretary Orbos, was invited by this guy, L11. They flew together with Pete Prado and another person. I won't tell you the name anymore. It doesn't matter anymore at this time. He knows who he is. They flew to Czechoslovakia because they knew that if they stick to the formula of BOT, build, operate, transfer, it was made into law. So the private sector would assume all operational and financial risks. They knew they couldn't afford to assume the financial and operational risk. So they inserted last minute the BLT, build, lease, transfer. In other words, they obligated the Philippine government and its taxpayers to pay a fixed lease to them, whether it's making money or not, whether it's carrying enough passengers or not. And I knew that the MRT Czechoslovakia was not fitted for that. And it was an old model. Even during that time, walang pyesa, no spare parts. They knew it. They knew that, the Czechoslovakian model hardly had any spare parts because it was an old model. So that's why yung problema that's happening now, we told them it's going to happen. And it happened. It's happening It happened before, it's still happening now. Okay? So they flew, then they forgot all about us. Okay? They rejected us because they said at that time we were only merely theoretical, unproven, it's limited systems capacity. In 1990, there was no search engine yet. Wala pang Google noon eh. No? We didn't know, or the DOTC, even the National Transport Center didn't know that there was already an existing a similar system in Curitiba, Brazil, the Rede Integrade de Transporte. But mainly transporting passengers in within city limits. But yung trackway, the way I designed it, was not just was designed not to just mass transport people, but also agri fisheries and other cargo products. That's why I call ours the trackway, because it's more expansive, dynamic, and inclusive to include transporting you know cargos, not only passengers. Okay, so
Okay.
we got rejected. Fine. Oh, but sabi namin, we warned you what your the BLT that you inserted, that's against the Filipinos' interest. Because at that time we were paying $11 million per month to a very few lucky stockholders of the MRT3. These were the Ayala Land, Phil Estate, Ramcar. Now it's $15 million a month. We're paying $15 million a month. That's 15 million. That if you multiply that 50, that's about 750 million pesos for a system that's already dilapidated, dysfunctional, even dangerous. You're paying for a 30, 40 years loan when the serviceable life of LRT is only 15 years, tops 10 years if it's really, overused, which is what happened. Diba? So, okay, so, and then what's the other funny thing is that, okay, LRT1 is Belgian, correct? LRT2 is Japanese, Sumitomo. MRT3 is Czechoslovakian. Now may mistiso na, may kahasaman Chinese, no? So when they say it's seamless, it's not going to be seamless because they're not compatible. So okay, we took it, and when the Gerhard Menkoff of the World Bank heard about this, he flew to the Philippines, tried to pick my mind. Sabi ko, this is the way it should. And he was impressed. He came out with an internal memorandum he distributed to the other countries. And he didn't even mention about the Curitiba, Brazil. No? So sabi niya, this kind of system should be the one that should be applied not only in the Philippines but other countries. Okay. Gerard Bernhoff now is called the number one expert of BRTs. Build,
Rapid transit.
bus rapid transit. Okay. In 1997, during the Ramos administration, another study was conducted by the Joint Interagency Committee, the OTC at that time, the OTC pa yan, DPWH and MMDA. They came out with the same conclusion. Road train or bus train, whatever you call it, has the same operating efficiency as rail train, so long as they're operating under a completely controlled, therefore completely programmable environment. It's not the rails, it's the trackway. So long as you have your own track, it's the trackway. They awarded to us already C5 in Commonwealth Avenue. But we got caught up with the Asian financial crisis. Hindi natuloy. Sabi ko, I'll just defer this to a more propitious time, which I tried to do during the time of Marojas. Okay? We wrote Marojas so many letters. He didn't even answer one letter. He didn't even answer us. Okay? So when Duterte won, sabi ko, maybe this is the right time to try it.
It may be a little late, and we don't want to cry over spilt milk. But let's just say, because plans are already for the North Luzon Railway down to Bicol, going as far as Clark. I think they're going as far as Ilocos, so that's the plan.
Yeah.
Let's just say we're in too deep, and we just say, look, loans have been signed. It's too late. What are the available corridors still to you?
The one from Tutuban is Clark is going to be elevated. So we confirmed this last Friday. So the upgrade will still be available. Okay, and now we signed a memorandum of understanding with the Panay Railways. No, we're gonna start there. It's going to be the first in the world to be converted from a railway to a truckway.
So this is the exciting part. So this is your dream
Yeah.
being realized.
Correct.
How big a corridor are we talking about?
We're talking about a 117-kilometer corridor. That's from Iloilo to Rojas City. That's kind of
big.
long. Huh? That's like from Manila to Tarlac.
Okay, so you now have the Panay corridor, which is about 117 kilometers. This is a good enough test bed.
It's a good start. It's a good enough start. And then phase 2 is supposed to start from Pasig, crossing Calibo, going to Caticlan where San Miguel is.
Mhm.
They have an international airport there. They have a 1,000 room 5-star hotel there. And they intend to put up a bridge from Caticlan to Boracay. That's good enough for us. The traffic in Metro Manila, we can solve this.
You can solve this not necessarily by doing much to Metro Manila, but
No,
opening up the
PNR for us.
yes,
We can divert
yes,
about 1 to 2 million passengers a day. Because if you're coming from Bulacan, okay, you go through, let's say you go through España,
Mhm.
you end up in Tutuban, but you still end up in Makati. You stop in in the Magallanes station.
Mhm.
So if you're coming from Bulacan, you can go to Makati. We pick you up there with our shuttle services. In other words, and then if you're coming from Laguna, same thing. So we estimate we can divert 500,000 to 1 million passengers a day. Not only the passengers, but especially the cargo trucks. The cargo trucks, James. We will empower these informal settlers. The other thing that we will also empower our farmers and fisher folks, because right now, the difference between farm gate price and sea gate price to urban market price is about 1,000%. Okay?
Wow.
Yung 5 pesos kinikita ng farmers, magsasaka, mangingisda, pagdating sa Manila or Bulacan, whatever, 50 pesos already. Okay? Where does this difference go? The difference go to millers, viajeros, mga illegal checkpoints, and cartelized traders. Of course, their respective profits. Di ba? So, kawawa yung farmers natin. That's why the average age of our farmers now is over 70 years old. And then kawawa rin mga consumers, ang mahal. But if we put the trackway, the farmers and the fisher folks will now be able to transport their produce and their catch directly to the urban market. No? So their 5 pesos will now become 20, 25 pesos. Since the transport cost will only be 5 pesos per kilo, we will now be buying their produce, no? Only at 30 pesos. And the dynamics of the social, economic, political development, that's what Lincoln did. And we can still do it. But we don't need rails anymore.
It's the space that you value.
Yeah, it's the trackway.
It's like when you use a frequency, we have frequencies for radio and all that.
Right.
And we have a digital frequency
Right.
that you're just using strictly for AM radio.
Right.
What you can fit in that pipeline is so much richer, but you're just wasting it on voice one way.
Yeah.
Whereas we could just use that exact same frequency to send in data backwards and forwards. And so is that a fair analogy?
It's a good analogy.
Mhm.
It's not the railway. Rails are redundancy, useless. Rails, you need 100,000 moving parts. In the trackway, 189, all available in the Philippines.
And that was Francis Yuseco, transport and traffic analyst turned investment banker, with his radical plan to turn the PNR into his own trackway. Pretty crazy? Pretty desperate? Well, you know what they say about desperate times. Calls for desperate measures. But who knows? You might have a great idea. An even better one than this. Drop us a line, jamesdeacon.ph@yahoo.com, because that's the whole point of this show, is to be able to give good ideas a chance to incubate through dialogue. This is James Deacon for Man on the Street, brought to you by 3M Auto.